Okay. So we're going to start off with handling trespass issues, and then I think we're going to move into the fun topic that everybody wants to talk about with Tony, which is drones. Because that's why you all are here, right, is drones.
No, we wouldn't know at all.
Oh, there's a lot. Oh, I guess it works better if I turn the remote on. So I'm Paul Goeringer. I've already introduced myself. I'm also a part of the Ag Law Education Initiative. There's our information at umaglawed.org. Keep going. So what does it take to be a trespasser? So within the confines of the law, a trespasser is anyone who enters your property without your consent and remains there. So if you go on someone else's property, you have no permission to be there, and you continue to stay there, you are a trespasser. I give you an example of someone just accidentally going on your property while they're hunting on somebody else's. Even though it's just an accident, you're still a trespasser in that situation. Now, with it, we have two types of trespass: civil trespass and criminal trespass. Criminal trespass, we have 4 ways you can be a criminal trespasser within the state of Maryland. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I put Delaware on the next slide. So I will bring Delaware up for those folks in Delaware. You are clearly occupying property that has been delineated with the paint required by DNR to mark no trespassing, usually blue paint on perimeter trees. You go pull a vehicle, or there's clearly posted a no trespassing sign. You go on a piece of property that says private driveway. You go on a piece of property where you've been told to get off, but yet you continue to stay there and you continue to remain on the piece of property. And then finally, if the land is cultivated and someone goes on that piece of property where the cultivated land is, it doesn't have to be marked. In that case, it is still trespass. Maryland at least delineates cultivated land from the rest of it. Anyone guilty of this can be imprisoned for no more than 90 days or face more than a $500 fine for the first offense. Delaware, it has to be first-degree criminal trespass and enter and remain unlawfully in a livestock facility knowingly. So you walk into a poultry facility knowingly, knowing you should not be there. That becomes trespass in the state of Delaware. That is up to 1 year in prison or a $2,300 fine. Delaware has delineated ag facilities differently than Maryland has done within the law. That's the criminal side of trespass. With trespass, we also have civil penalties associated with it too, because people can come on and tear stuff up, right? Destroy property, do other things, damage stuff while they're on there. So this is different than criminal trespass. Criminal trespass, somebody's going to come in, the law is going to get involved, court proceedings will be held to convict them of a crime. There could be a fine attached to it. That's going to go into the public sector. This is to help you pay for damage that could be associated with that property. We need to prove 3 elements to do this. The person went on the property or exercised some control over your property. That exercise or some control occurred because the other party's physical act or occupation or physical force against the property. And the person did it without your permission. At no point do we really have to post the property, no trespassing in this case. They just come on the property and do something in that case. Trespassing signs really help in this situation too, to make it very clear to people coming on. Here, the person would just be liable for the damages caused to the property by them coming on. The best example where I get the most phone calls on is somebody was out riding an ATV, cross crop land while crops were planted. What's the most they can do? I always tell them the same thing. You can call the police, let them know somebody criminally trespassed on the property, handle it that way, and then at the same time go over and you're going to have to figure out the damage associated with the crops that were damaged. How much yield are you going to lose? Other things, how much is it going to cost to repair the piece of ground if there are ruts now put in it for what you're doing on the property, and you can go out and do that. So my example, we have a neighbor who goes out and rides an ATV across your piece of property. Here we have this ability where we can go and show criminal trespass and at the same time civil trespass for the damages that are associated with that. So let's talk about strategies in the end. Post no trespassing signs, put blue paint up on perimeter fences. If you don't know how many signs to put up, I forgot to bring copies again, but we have a checklist where you can go in and input all of these things, and you should get more than 2 signs on your property if you do this, because the state law reads you have to have signs with an S. So that means more than 1. So if you do this and you get 1 sign attached to the piece of property, you did the checklist wrong and you need to redo it, because I worked it out to where it should always come up with at least 2. This is a more expensive option to think about, but putting a fence up can potentially keep people off the property. What should you never put up to prevent people from coming on the property? You can do that as long as it's a clearly marked fence. Don't string a single cable across the spot where you know they cross. Yeah, somebody just did the best sign as to what would happen to it. My favorite case to use with my undergrad class is, did anybody know, who knows about Little Abner, the comic strip? Few people know about Little Abner. So you probably would not have wanted to go to the Little Abner amusement park that existed in the state of Arkansas at one point, would you have? John may have actually gone to this amusement park. It was called Dog Patch USA. Dog Patch USA has shockingly gone out of business in the 80s or the early 90s. It has now became this defunct park you can walk around, and was not really open to the public. It was privately owned, but there was state parkland right across from it, because it was in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, and yet they thought this park was going to succeed. The gentleman that owned the property at the time decided the smartest thing he could do was, across the ATV trail that people had cut through his property, was to hang a wire to stop people from riding their ATVs at neck height or chest height. He neglected to take into the fact that we're all different heights, and my chest height is not the same as everybody else's chest height. That's a different height than me. He ended up injuring a kid severely. He no longer owns that piece of property because he was sued and lost multiple times over the injuries caused to the small kid. The state now owns it. It's now a piece of the larger state park. It's a more fascinating case to use because it just shows that you get mad and you use stupid decisions sometimes, and you should think about some of the things you do before you do them.
What kind of fence should you put up then?
You can put a barbed wire fence up. Barbed wire fence is now clear. We all know the fence is there because you can see the posts. He had no posts. He just had a large thing hung up. Get signage. Consider other strategies that don't hurt people to deter them from the property. I'm a part of this. They do a lot on poultry compared to other daily blogs, but if you're curious about poultry issues, sometimes they're totally wrong with the numbers they put together for the area as we had happen, because they're more fit what could go on in Alabama or other states than they would here, but it is a part of Southern Ag Today. You can find it at southernagtoday.org. I believe that QR code still works. I talk a lot about this on my site at agris.umd.edu, and I read stuff to you because I have to provide a transcript, and this is the easiest way to do it, and you can find that at agris.umd.edu as well. And then the only other thing I'll point out is, if you really want to learn more about this, and I can get the dates to Jenny and John, but we're doing landowner webinars starting at the end of this month, and we'll run every Friday at noon until the end of April. And for anyone that wants to complain about a Friday at noon webinar, that was the only time that was consistently available on my calendar. So it was more about what my calendar allowed me to do, since I had to actually be there for all of them. And the first session will be all about landowner liability. And we'll talk a lot more about trespass and a lot more about other stuff with that as well. But what questions do folks have at trespass to start with?
That's questions.
By the way, they start on March 31st at noon.
Yes. And that one will run at least an hour and a half because based on how they've gone in person, it will run at least an hour and a half. So pack a lunch or bring your own lunch. And they're free.
The signs that we have given out, the vice charity signs. Which ones I'm talking about?
I do remember them.
So do they work for no trespassing?
I believe they did because you had no trespassing on them, didn't you?
No, we didn't have no trespassing. What did we put on there?
We have no admittance without owner permission, so it says
Yeah.
stop, no admittance, so it counts. We actually ran that by you when we made it.
Yeah, we actually, and we talked to others about it too, I remember at the time when you put them together.
I have a question. My property butts up against the Chop Tank River. And the name of the farm is Spring Branch, which that's the name of the stream that leaves the river and runs all the way over into Delaware. But it runs through my property. I own on both sides. Part of it is tidal from the Chop Tank River, and part of it is just a natural run stream. What do I own as far as you can't trespass any further? I own the land on both sides, but I've had people walking in the stream. If you're familiar, they're herring run. In the springtime, they come up to spawn and all that kind of stuff. And these jokers are out there in that stream. They're illegal, but they're out there in the stream. And I'm talking about a stream that's maybe 15 or 20 foot wide. And it runs pretty close to my house at times. Have I got any legal authorities that get the hell out of that stream?
That's where I'm asking Tony because I struggle with like how the water runs in the state because I did not get licensed in the state.
My house, but maybe 200-300 yards down, it is tidal. So I understand if you're in tidal water, they can probably come and go as they please because that's the state of Maryland.
Right.
But up here, it's non-tidal, and I own on both sides. So
Now, all right, here's the.
Oh, they're going to make you put a mic on.
I might won't believe.
I usually don't need a microphone.
That's just what I think.
It's just for the recording.
Oh, you're documenting this?
Yeah.
Did everybody sign and give their permission? Just teasing. Okay, you're right. Title, the rule with title is mean high water down belongs to the state. The land under it belongs to the state. Mean high water and above belongs to you.
But beyond tidal.
All right, and the other rule with water is that floating on it, if it's navigable water, floating on it is a public right.
I've got a question on that.
Now, the land, and I'd have to know more about your deed in particular because some of the deeds for farms go back, very, very old land patent type, where you own the land under as well as you own the land on the sides.
I've seen that in my deed. But
And so those people that come up on the stream, if you own that land, they can't be walking on the land, even if it's under the water. That's your land. Though if they are able to canoe, kayak up the stream, then that's a different matter. That's usually in the public's domain. The public, if it's a navigable water, the public's allowed to utilize it.
well, that brings up another question on what is navigable.
Whoa.
Let me tell you what I got into.
I don't think we have enough time today.
Supreme Court's trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that when I go to pay my property tax, they have me down for 2 acres of riverfront property. I said, it's part of my license. That's bullshit. I don't have 2 acres of riverfront property. So Caroline County, planning, or planning and zoning, whatever it is, we go in there, and somebody from the Western Shore, and he said, well, Mr. Bowman, according to this map, you've got this much navigable water in front of your property.
A blue line stream.
And I said, are we talking high tide or low tide? Because on low tide, you can't get from me to Janet in a kayak, let alone a boat.
Sure. I grew up in Dorchester, so I know what you mean.
Anyway, they're saying, well, he can go as far as he wants to go up that stream on a high tide. I said, we're having a problem here now.
The difficulty is that even on low tide, mean high water, and this is again just tidal, but mean high water is a specific location. So even if it's low tide, that mean high water line, which is the average point where the high tide reaches, that is the public versus private From there, channelward is all land owned by the state. And so when even if it's low tide, that mud belongs to the state. And so it's treated just like floating on the water. But with non-tidal, it's much more difficult to tell. And there are measures that you can take to keep people from coming from coming along waterfront or a waterway that that crosses your property if the land ownership is correct under the deed. But usually, if you can kayak it, it's going to be considered public access.
You know how wide we're talking?
I understand.
We're talking a 15 or 20-foot stream that runs for half a mile through my property. And it's legal for him to kayak up and down that stream?
Like I said, I'd have to look at
I
your.
have a problem with that.
I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean.
Fall down, stuff happens. I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. But again, I'm saying that as far as that's the typical, but like I said, every deed sort of has its own.
Well, I don't own underneath mine, doesn't say anything about that.
Well, but it might not have to. It depends on what type of deed and where, when you go back in time, how the land was originally conveyed out from, whether it was assigned by the king through a land patent back in the days, or whether it was from the government at some subsequent time. It really does often depend on that kind of historic record to see what rights the public has to go up that stream. I understand exactly what you mean, and it's
Well, we get into hunting rights and stuff like that.
sure, sure.
You got a lease for hunting?
It's a big can of worms is what it opens up, because you're only talking 15, 20 foot.
Right.
That runs on for many, many, many yards.
Now, I would say that when they're on that stream, they're not allowed to do anything that impacts your land. So someone on that stream can't hunt because where they're going to shoot. They're going to be shooting in a situation, even if the duck is on the stream, it's going to end up over your land. So that kind of thing, right? Depends how bad their shot is. But so that's a little easier. But at the same time, just the water access, and if they're fishing in particular, that makes it much harder. But I understand what you mean.
So I have another question. So if someone is trespassing on your farm, so somebody rides up my farm
The
lane,
lights on.
and they ride
Oh,
down to the chicken
thanks.
house, and then I catch them on the way back, what am I legally able to do?
I usually tell people to tell them to leave or just tell them to leave.
But they're already leaving, then they're going out the
Yeah.
driveway.
And then they're just say you're trespassing and leave.
Lock them in before, just so I can find out who they are. But you can take a picture of them,
Yes,
correct?
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you can take a picture of their license plate?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And those are the two things you absolutely should do.
Yeah.
I agree. Tell them to leave. Tell them, you're trespassing. You can't be here. You have to leave. Even if they're on their way out, say it and get the photographs.
Yep.
Don't block them in, because you get into situations where there's wrongful imprisonment. Somebody can say you kidnapped them. You never know what kind of crazy things people are going to say in those situations. The best thing is to not have an encounter with them. Document with the availability of cameras on your phone and things like that today. It's so easy to do. That's what you should do. If you're within voice range, say it. This is private property. You're trespassing. You have to leave. And then call the police.
Because that's what I did. I know you could take a picture of their license plate, but I did not realize you could take a picture of them. But I had
Sure you can.
Yeah.
You cannot.
Turn around, why don't we?
So you're right.
I had two young girls that came up and they rode, like mine and I were outside, rode right past us, but the other chicken house, they went all the way down, because we don't usually do, came back, and they said they were looking for a horse. I said, does this look like a horse farm?
Maybe the horse was loose.
No,
They might have got in the-
They're coming to buy a horse. I'm like,
They might have gotten in the poultry barn. You never know.
I know, so that's, it's scary.
Weird things have happened.
thought it was a nice indoor arena.
Maybe that's the low ceiling.
Yeah.
Fancy one.
Well, and that's, clearly document as much as you can. Don't encounter them unless you absolutely have to, and just say it's private property, you have to leave. And again, as Paul said earlier, make sure your property's posted.
Yeah.
Do the blue lines on the surrounding trees. and so that you at least are doing everything that you need to do so that if push comes to shove and you end up in court with these people, you have your side of everything taken care of. And you're not going to be in a situation where they're going to argue that you weren't posted. And on that note, I encourage my clients, when you post the property, while you're there that day, posting it, snap a picture of it. Or if it's along a highway, take a picture from the highway so that you have something that's dated way back when that shows it was posted. So when they, at some point in the future, say you never posted it, you could say, yes, here's the posters, here's the pictures before, here's the pictures today, I'm posted.
Or if the signs just magically disappear before.
Oh, sure.
Afterwards, you also have proof that
Right.
you had it posted.
Right, because those signs do disappear, whether it's intentional or whether it's weather related.
So one other question I have, and I've gotten as a county ag agent, if they see somebody out taking a water sample, like on a ditch that might go down their property, or, so, you know, what should they do then? You've got a stream, but, you know, a lot of us have ditches that run down our property.
Ditches are privately owned. I would not, you know, they don't have any right to take a sample out of your property, period. The stream, you know, you get into that same issue. If they can float to it, then they can take a sample. But again, you know, it does depend on what the deed says. But for the most part, unless they're in navigable water, they're not allowed to take a sample from your property.
How about
It's your
county tax? Now, we have a lot of county tax ditches.
county tax ditch? No,
Yeah.
no.
They're the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's your property.
It's your property, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And as far as the tax people go, and they say your waterfront, that's a whole different animal. And a lot of times, if they see anything that looks like a marsh, they're going to say your waterfront because they want more money.
Been
But-
down that road.
But that doesn't necessarily mean your waterfront.
That's almost,
So-
you gotta keep appealing and
You
appealing.
can't do anything with it.
Right,
I mean, absolutely nothing.
right,
The tide can haul in plastic bottles and milk jugs and everything on the tide,
yeah.
but I can't even go out there and pick one of them up. But yet it's their trash.
Can't go pick it up because it's just not accessible. Yeah,
But I'm being taxed for it, but I can't go out
right,
there and pick up.
you're right.
an empty
And you
boat.
certainly, you know, you wouldn't be able to put a pier out there and,
Not legally.
no,
You can't.
no. So, I mean, that's,
I put a float.
and that's why you fight the tax assessment when they say
Does that
that.
make any sense? I can put a floating pier, but I can't drive poles in that.
That doesn't make sense.
Does anybody else have any questions on trespassing?
I have a hypothetical question. This isn't serious at all. Can you shoot a trespasser?
No.
Wait,
If you feel like you're physically in danger, then there's a self-defense rule, and you're able to defend yourself. But you have to be able to, or you have to be able to show when the prosecutor comes. You have to be able to show that you were in danger or in, you know, you felt that you were imminently at risk of health. I'm sorry, imminent risk to your health, well-being, life, that kind of thing. Now you can protect your family as well. But again, you have to be in that posture where you're able to show that a reasonable person would have agreed that you were at risk.
It's really not that silly of a question because out west there's some pretty hardcore activists against.
Oh, there are.
And in North Dakota, you can still shoot a trespasser as long as they're not in a covered wagon. It's on the books, you can shoot them. Unless they're in a covered wagon.
Well, in Maryland, as far as I know, in Delaware, you can't shoot a trespasser unless the only shooting that is accepted, or it's really not accepted, it's excused, is if you are personally at risk. And it's got to be risk of life. I mean, you can't just say, I was scared. I mean, you have to have some reasonable articulation as to why that person at that moment in your mind was putting your life at risk, or the risk of your children, your spouse, something like that.
You hate to say it, but it would instantly flip the sympathy switch from you to them.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the public eye, as a communications person, I can't think of a better method for generating public sympathy for a trespasser than learning that they were shot.
Yeah.
And, I mean, again, I hate to say that, but it would probably have that effect, and that's not what you want.
Yeah, because as a defense, it's something you have to prove. You have to show that you were defending yourself. It's not something where, you know, in certain circumstances this is allowed, but in other circumstances it's not. It's not one of those situations where someone will neutrally look at it and see whether the circumstances apply. It's your burden to show that, that you were defending yourself or someone. And you're not allowed to use physical violence to defend your property. Someone can, in a parking lot or in your driveway, someone can key your car, can do whatever they want to do to your physical property, steal your property. You are not allowed to use physical violence to protect your property. You're only allowed to use physical violence if you are at risk defending yourself, defending your family. Yes.
If they're trying to enter like one of our commercial barns, are we able to physically stand between them to try to prevent them? And if they try to physically move us, then defend ourselves?
You can stand between them. If they touch you, then you can defend yourself. But, you know, hopefully if before you get yourself in front of them, someone's on the phone calling 911.
That's where you want someone calling 911 while you're keeping somebody out.
Aren't very close to
Yeah.
the police headquarters.
That's
I
right.
know.
You have at least 10
That's right.
minutes until someone shows up.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, livestock would be property?
Yes.
What was the question?
It's livestock property, yes. In that, for defense purposes.
Yeah.
Gonna kill
Your pet is property for defense purposes too. It's not just livestock. It has to be defense of a human.
He can shoot my livestock, but I can't shoot him.
No.
Well, he can't legally, no.
Yeah.
Like what I'm saying,
He can't legally shoot your
he
livestock.
can shoot my wife, and I can shoot him back.
Yes.
No, you can't shoot back. You can only shoot to defend
He
yourself,
just killed my wife.
but doesn't matter. You can only shoot to defend.
I'm going to jail then, because I'm.
Well, that's fine. I understand exactly what you mean. Now, if the person has shot your wife and they're standing there in front of you, the odds are they're going to shoot you too. So it probably would be self-defense.
I was going to say, in that case, you're probably defending yourself so you can get out of it.
But yeah, I mean, that's the reality is if the harm has already been done, you're not defending anyone.
Yeah.
I'm defending myself.
Well, then, if you can show that you're defending yourself, then that's okay.
Look, they had an incident down the road, a guy, there were two people out there, and the guy had a single shot, break action shotgun. And he shot the other guy in a brawl, in a fight, and his buddy was standing there, and he pulls out his gun and shoots the guy with the shotgun. And he goes to jail for murder, because they said the guy with the shotgun has only had one shot, a single shot.
Well, it doesn't take long to reload a single shot.
Yeah.
But
So-
he didn't. When he shot him, the gun was empty. But
It doesn't. Well, I think
they
that's
charged him with murder.
I think that's crazy, but
I would.
I don't
Yeah.
know all the circumstances.
It seems a little crazy.
Well, they stand-
That's another thing. Like, how do you know it's a single shot at that point? You're not paying attention.
We get people in commercial egg operations, they're vandalized.
Yes.
They can kill birds, let thousands of birds go.
Yes.
They're usually, but we really can't do any harm to them, any circumstances. Our only option is to call.
Call the police. And you can, like you said, you can stand in front of them and say you're trespassing, you have to leave, but you're not allowed to physically contact, physically to do physical harm to them unless you're a human being is at risk that you're protecting. Now, that doesn't mean that a jury would look at things exactly. Juries look at things and they may not agree. A jury may say, you're absolutely right, you should have shot the guy. A jury may say that it was okay that you pushed those people to get them away because they were going to set 10,000 chickens loose. It all depends, but I'm not in favor of being in that position. So your better position is to have called the police and do what you can to interfere with them getting in. You're allowed to interfere. You're allowed to stand in front of them. You're allowed to, put your car in front of the door so they can't drive in or they can't try and enter your facility, that kind of thing. But you can't have physical harm.
Paul, are you done now?
I'm done.
Well, Paul's been moving slightly to the side. You haven't noticed?
I've just been letting. Well, he kept. I thought I was going to get pushed at one point when he was moving to protect the chickens.
Do you have a PowerPoint that you're just gonna talk?
I do not. I just talk.
I'm going to take my mic off and turn it off.
Sure. Sure. All right. As I said earlier, my name's Tony Gorski. I'm a Dorchester County kid, and I have been doing environmental law throughout the state of Maryland for a long time. I have a law degree as well as a master's degree in environmental law, and my undergraduate degree is all in natural resources sciences. So I represented the Department of the Environment for 6 or 7 years when I first got out of school, and since then I've been doing private practice. My office is in Annapolis, but I really am all over the state. I have dairy farmers in Western Maryland. I have poultry farmers on the Eastern Shore. I work a lot with DCA. And so, anyway, I do a lot of environmental work, but I do a lot of the overlap between ag and environmental. Now, the following, I don't have the pretty slides like Paul does, but following Paul's issue of trespass, it's very timely and very sort of a developing area or developing phase of trespass, which is the use of drones. Drones are everywhere. Estimates 5 years ago said that by this year we'd have 30,000 drones in the skies in the United States, and I expect that it's far more than that. So they're everywhere. They oh, you know what? The questions earlier about pictures and taking a picture of a person, I've neglected to say you can take a picture of a person, but you can't record audio in Maryland without the other person's permission. And so audio. You can take a video of them, and that video is allowed to be used as evidence, but you can't let the sound play in court because you didn't, unless you had permission to get their voice. And that stems from old telephone law, basically, that you can't record people surreptitiously on the telephone. You have to tell them. For instance, in Florida, there's no notice requirement, but if you're on the phone, you have to have a signal. So if you ever call someone in Florida and you hear a beeping sound, that means they're recording you. And that's all they have to do. Maryland's not that way. Every state is different, but Maryland is one where you have to have express permission to record voice audio. So if you are filming or taking a picture of someone, you know, the pictures are the better. Filming if they're further away so you're not hearing it, but recognize that you shouldn't record people without getting their permission in Maryland. Not only would you not be able to use the audio in court if you had a case, but it's also a crime to record someone's audio without their permission in Maryland. So you could, and some of you may remember Linda, what was her name? I can't remember now. Pardon? Linda Tripp, who recorded Monica Lewinsky's conversations about her interactions with President Clinton. She was prosecuted, or they wanted her prosecuted. I don't remember if they did prosecute. I don't think they did. But the big discussion in Maryland and D.C. at the time was she released all this information. She told all this information, but she also had an audio recording, and that's illegal, so she should be prosecuted. So there are cases that do this, and even after that case, they still haven't changed the law in Maryland. You still have to have permission.
One more question. So a lot of us have cameras on our farm, you know, so they can see.
But they don't do audio.
They don't do audio, but those are okay.
Yep.
Record
Absolutely.
coming in and out.
Absolutely. And holding your camera up and taking a picture of their face, you're allowed to do.
They, like the ring cameras and the ones that are like the ring cameras, those will record audio. It's short little pieces.
Yeah, now there are circumstances where if someone comes up and rings and presses your button and talks, they're not going to be able to argue that they didn't want to be recorded. So there are technology, the law is behind technology. Technology is changing and catching some of these things, but there are circumstances where you might have a recording. Like if someone leaves a voicemail, you didn't ask their permission if they wanted to be recorded, but they left you a voicemail, so they knew they were being recorded. They wanted to be recorded. So there are circumstances where a recording without express permission is valid and usable in court if you end up in court, but not every.
That's public and private property?
Yes, in Maryland, yes. Yes, you can. So, for example, you can walk up to someone in a crowd and video them all you want, but you can't. If you're capturing audio, you have to have their permission, or it's illegal. And in the event that something happens, you're in court, they would show the video, but they would not let you play the audio in Maryland. I don't know what Delaware's law is on audio recordings.
You pull your phone out and you say, I'm going to record you, and they say, well, I don't care.
Well, you're giving them notice. You're telling them that they're being recorded, but it's not permission. So Maryland, you're in a weird spot. But if you tell them you're recording them, I'm recording you for my safety, et cetera, and they continue to go on, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be hard for them to argue that they didn't want to be recorded or they didn't give their permission. If they didn't want, if they didn't want to be recorded, then they should have just shut up. But anyway, but yeah, there needs to be some sort of exchange where they say, no, I don't want you to. Now, I don't know whether the phone features have the ability to turn off the audio recording while your video is going. I don't know the answer to that. But, you know, that would be a good feature to have in Maryland to avoid the whole issue for now, yeah. But there, and again, this is all about what's reasonable. And, you know, typically if someone is on your land and you're videotaping them and you say, look, you're here illegally, I'm videotaping you, you need to leave, that kind of thing, you're in good shape, I think, in terms of giving them notice of what's going on and not incurring a prosecution. The question of what you can use in court later would be up in the air, I think. But again, if you have cameras on your property, I think it's a good idea to post it and say you are being recorded for several reasons. Number one, that alone will deter some people from acting like morons, and it may also deter vandalism. Doesn't always, but it might. Some people like to have their crimes captured on film, and so you can't do anything with people like that. But if you post it, then you've got, you know, that extra level of protection and hopefully an extra level of deterrent as well.
Question for you. So, and I've done this before. I'm in a bad or a sticky situation, so I actually called like Paul one time, put him on speakerphone so he listens to everything that's going on, so that I have a witness to what took place. Is that legal?
Yes. Yeah, there's nothing that says you can't, you know, it will be like someone encountering you and you holding a microphone up to them. There's nothing that says you can't broadcast what they're saying. There's nothing that says you can't put someone else on the phone to listen to what they're saying. But it's the recording aspect that gets the problem. And if, you know, in the event that you're really in a situation, I think that's a very good idea to call someone and just have the phone on so that people can hear what's going on. I mean, I think that helps as well. Oftentimes, you'll find in many situations, I don't do a lot of criminal law, but in many situations, 911 calls have so much background audio on them. It's amazing what the 911 callers hear when, especially if the person that's calling has a good phone. That audio will pick up a whole lot of information about what's going on in the background. And that's the same with your phone. If you are in a dangerous situation and you call Paul, then Paul will hear a lot of what you have to say. But, you know, you can call whoever your business partner is or whoever your spouse is. You can call. There's someone you can probably call that will answer the phone and hear things. And you can. The thing is to just have it there and have it going. You don't necessarily don't get distracted, because if you're in a dangerous situation and you get distracted, then you're vulnerable. So if you do this, what I would suggest is that you would make the call, and when the person answers, just say, look, I've called my friend and they're listening to you too, and I don't feel safe, I need you to leave my property, whatever you need to say, so that the person listening actually gets the gist of what's going on, instead of just not hearing anything and saying, that must be a misdial, and hanging up.
Can you record them and put them on social media?
It's interesting, if you've got audio of someone doing something in public, it's hard for them to argue that they don't want, that they had some objection to you recording them because they're behaving in the manner that they're behaving. Social media causes, it's a different level of publication. The video, certainly, there's nothing that stops you from publishing the video of.
Yeah, if they were on your farm stealing or taking
Yep,
something.
yep, there's nothing that stops you. That's your video recording. That's not theirs, that's yours. They came onto your property, and there's nothing that says you can't have a camera that records that. It's when the audio kicks in that you get in this weird situation, and because every state is different, Maryland has this requirement for permission to record audio. And so, you know, one thing that works, of course, is I'm recording you. I'm telling you now, I'm recording you. And I mean, they're going to have a hard time arguing that they didn't want to be recorded if they didn't shut up and leave. Okay. All right. No one wants to talk about drones. Good. Oh no, don't mention balloons. Balloon's not a drone. And of course, they're all Chinese drones, so you just have to be careful. All right, drones are an ag issue for the whole reason that trespass is an ag issue. Particularly today, you have lots of people, and I represent not just farmers and ag interests, but I also represent sand and gravel mining operators, landfill operators throughout Maryland and in other states as well. And any business that has property is dealing with drone issues today. I have a dairy farmer in Western Maryland whose neighbor incessantly flies a drone over. And then they don't understand anything that goes on at a dairy farm. So they fly over, and if anything looks different, they call the Department of the Environment, or they call the Department of Ag. And they try and have someone come up and do an inspection. And I've had calls on Sunday mornings from lawyers in the Attorney General's office saying, we got a call about this person, I know this is your client, or do we need to go out there? And I would say, look, you know, you've got to stop. The problem is politicians in particular don't like to tell a citizen no. They don't like to say, you've lost your mind, leave that person alone. And so they look to the agencies and say, investigate this, figure out, is there something wrong? Well, the agencies, because the politicians make those kinds of calls, the agencies have these knee-jerk reactions. Oh, we got to go out and we got to take a look. It's overkill, and we're going through, it's going to be another 5 or 10 years easily before this all sort of settles out, because these drones are becoming more and more popular. What's allowed to be recorded is changing in some states, but also the political environment is such that it's easy to get someone riled up. And so because of that, the agencies all know that the politicians control their budget, and that makes them respond to the politician. And so that causes an excess use of resources, in my view, that turns out to be a big waste of time. I had the one example, my dairy farmer pump died in his well. Of course, the pump in the well was 400 and some feet down with steel lining, so you had to get a rig in there to set up the rig, to pull up the pipe, to be able to check the pump and figure out what was going on with his well. They called the state and said, he's drilling a new well. He's not allowed to drill a new well. He never got a well permit. It was nonsense. But I spent 2 hours on a Sunday morning dealing with it because this neighbor had a drone and thought that they saw somebody doing something that wasn't really happening. They didn't understand what was going on. And even the Department of the Environment, I had to get them to call their well people, their geology people, about piping for them to understand that you really do have to put up the rig to pull up that much pipe in order to check that pump. It wasn't just something, you know, a lot of people think that every pump just has the black pipe that comes on a roll and can go down, and so you should be able to roll it up and take a look at it, but it doesn't work that way. When you've got steel piping, you pull up 18 feet of it, and you disconnect, and you pull up 18 feet more, and you disconnect. It's a big process. And so these drones are here to stay, and they're getting more and more popular. They're also getting less and less expensive. You can get a drone the last time we did this presentation, the folks from Wycomico County Sheriff's Office were there, and they were telling us about the ability of their drone to zoom in and see things, you know, read the serial number on a package of Tic Tacs laying in a field practically. And their drone cost them $1,100, I think they said. So it doesn't take much to get some of these drones that can do some pretty amazing things. Now, so what's being done about regulating drone use? And it's not a lot. In Maryland, we are a state that has a lot of defense contractors, and defense contractors like drones and do research with drones. Some of them have farms on the Eastern Shore where they try out their drone development work. And so it was in 2017, I think, a particular farmer, it might have been a little earlier than that, a particular farmer was annoyed by someone who owned the farm next door that was doing drone development and practicing trying to fly their drones to see what they would do. And the county the county they were in was going to adopt zoning controls over drones, where you could do this, what you could do, that kind of thing. And this, because of the defense industry primarily, Maryland state legislature passed a law and said, no, only the state can regulate drones. So in Maryland, only the states can regulate drones. You can't have any relief from your county officials. And so, but what Maryland says is that basically every place is open unless it's regulated by the feds. All Maryland says is it's completely legal to fly drones. Now, what the feds have done is basically, it's very similar to airplanes. From 400 feet in the sky up is federal jurisdiction. From 400 feet down, the feds don't regulate it. Now, they don't regulate what you do in that airspace, but they do regulate drone use. If you are a commercial drone, and we're going to distinguish between commercial and recreational for a second, and I'll tell you what the difference is in just a minute. But if you are a commercial drone and you are less than 55 pounds, then the federal government isn't necessarily concerned about what you're doing. If you are a commercial drone and you exceed 55 pounds, then they do start to put requirements in place. Now, and that's based on the size of the drone and the speed. Any drone that is used for something other than just having fun and flying around is a commercial drone. It doesn't have to be a business. It can be a nonprofit. It can be you. If you own it and you fly it up to see if your neighbor has a zoning violation, that's not recreation. That's commercial under the federal requirement, under the federal laws, the Federal Department of Transportation, obviously the Aviation Administration. And what they basically say is that if you have a drone that weighs more than 55 pounds or that exceeds, that can go faster than 100 miles an hour, which is not, you'd be surprised, these things can move. Although the 100 miles an hour ones are typically more like little airplanes than they are the kind of quadcopter sort of drones, although those can go really fast too. But you have to, in order to operate one of those from a commercial perspective, and again, remember, here's the distinction. Recreation is you out in the backyard having fun with your kid. Commercial is everything else. If you have a specific use, if you want to take pictures to turn them into the government, if you want to take pictures to turn them into your insurance company, it's very questionable as to whether you have a recreational drone or a commercial drone. If it's like for example, roofing contractors use drones to fly over and look at roofs to say whether or not a hailstorm has committed damage and that sort of thing. Those are all commercial uses. Someone flying over to take a picture of what's going on your property, that's a commercial use. Commercial in the sense of drones doesn't mean that it's a business that's operating or that it's being operated for profit. It's for any use other than just fun. Once you go beyond just fun, it's considered a commercial drone. And what that means is that you have to be certified to fly it. You have to have it registered with the government. And your certification it's a 5-year process you go through. But what's interesting too is that your drone is supposed to be broadcasting a signal. Very much like ships at sea and airplanes broadcast a signal, and that is a specific identifier. In theory, we're not there yet, but in theory, we're going to be able to, whether law enforcement has more capability on this right now, but in theory, you'll be able to, if you see a drone, you'll be able to recept the signal, and it'll give you a serial number, and the FAA will be able to tell you who owns that drone. We're not quite there yet, but that's where it's headed. And so they're supposed to broadcast, and the reason is that if someone does something improper with a drone, you want to be able to find out who it is and make them stop. And that's how we're going to get to some of these trespass issues as well. If someone is disturbing your property, if someone is doing something that's in your mind violating your privacy, then this is the kind of information that you would like to be able to get. FAA has it in place and is able to get these broadcast signals. They did it mostly for the airports. That's obviously the first place where they wanted to get the protection. And so they'll be able to track who it is that's flying the drones, but eventually we'll all be able to receive that kind of signal. It'll almost be like a phone number. When you get the signal, it'll have a number that tells you what the drone number is, and there'll be a database that tells you who owns that drone.
There's an app with airplanes. You can take a picture with your phone, run it through the app, and
Yes.
see where that plane is going.
That's true. And there are web pages where you can look at every plane that's in the air of the United States and pick on one and see where it's going and what it's doing.
If someone physically comes on your property, goes around your buildings, drapes around, whatever, they're trespassing. What is the difference if they send a drone in to do the same thing?
I agree with you.
Trespassing there.
I agree with you, but the law hasn't gotten there yet. All right? But
So the law isn't protecting a drone either then, to physical harm, because it's not a human being.
yes, it's private property, and you don't have a right to shoot it. You don't have a right to catch it.
It's on my property.
Now, if it were to come down, or if you were to capture it, then it's arguable that it's in a position where it shouldn't be. There's the 400-foot issue is a very complicated thing. It's hard to tell what 400 feet is. It's not necessarily, but for most people, it's hard to look up and say, oh, that's more than 400 feet. But at the same time, it's not very far. 400 feet is not that much. And so once you're below that, in particular, if the drone is being flown at a level that is at roof line or lower, I believe that you have a much better case of saying that that's a trespass, and certainly an invasion of your privacy. Now, if it's a barn or a chicken house, invasion of privacy is a harder case. If it's a house, it's your home, then that's definitely an invasion of privacy. If they can see into rooms in your home, things like that, that's going to be an invasion of privacy. But below 400, between the roof and 400 feet, it's pretty much open space. Now, there are a couple of cases that talk about what happens when someone violates that space. There are some really old cases where people were caught holding cameras over fences and taking pictures to get photographs of their neighbor or whatever. Those cases have all been held to be trespass. Now, that person didn't step onto the property. They were in the airspace just like the drone was. But there's only one or two of those cases. In Maryland, there's only one. And it's from 1936. But what you're going to see over the next decade or so is these kinds of lawsuits are going to start being filed. Ultimately, there's going to need to be someone who wants to sue to say, flying this drone over my farm is trespass. And it's got to go through the court system to see if the courts agree that it's a trespass. Right. And you got to get, unless you can get a legislator to adopt a reg or a requirement. In Maryland, I don't think it's going to happen because they very rapidly adopted the legislation in 2017 that said drones can fly wherever they want. Now, there are lots of restrictions that the FAA does have. For example, and this is why they have these, they're forcing everyone to get certified, and they're forcing everyone to have the signals. Now, how you find out, it's not like a car where it's registered and it's on the road, and you can stop them and see whether they have a license. Forcing people to be registered and certified operators of these drones is a difficult challenge, and it's going to be a long time before it gets to a point where I would say that they're getting everyone registered, because it's just too difficult or too easy to get a drone and do things with it that no one knows about. You're flying at night, you're flying in the rural areas, you don't have to be very close to where the drone is, you can be hiding somewhere. So it's hard to get. It's going to take a long time for all of this to work out and have the laws work effectively. But there are restrictions. For example, drones are not allowed to be flown over public gatherings without special permits. Drones are not allowed to be flown over like a stadium, that kind of thing. You can't fly a drone over that unless you, the FAA and the state give you approval to do that. You can't fly a drone over a road, state highway, or even a county road because of the obvious risks that come from it. If a drone falls and hits a car, there's going to be a car accident. So there are restrictions that they have, and the speed is another restriction that the feds they have in place right now. But for example, for the recreational people, what the feds have done is they've designated air parks, and there are, I think, 3 in Maryland, where the speed is off. There's a designated area. I think one of them's in Harford County, where you could go and fly your drone. You go as fast as you want. You can do all kinds of things because the feds have designated this acreage as being a drone zone, or what, I can't remember what they call it now. But it's the idea that if you have recreational drones and you want a safe place to go and you want to fly it really fast, they've set these up all around the country. The feds have already said, okay, these are drone flight zones. They make sure they're away from airports. They make sure they're away from power lines, that kind of stuff. They do all sort of the preliminary evaluation. And then they say, if you want to fly your drone like a lunatic, you can do it right there. And the idea being that for people who are legitimately interested in setting records for speed and doing those kinds of things, they have a place where they can do it. But at the same time, again, it's very difficult. It's going to take a while for what they've adopted in the past 5 years. They've really adopted a lot of these things. So it's going to take a while before those controls are all in place. And so in the meantime, it's going to take private parties who have believe that their property's been trespassed, there's been some damage done or something, to pursue someone who owns a drone, and you have to know who it is. My advice is with the drones is always, if you know who it is or if you can figure out who it is, try to talk to them. If you don't know them, try to talk to them. If you know them, go talk to them. If you know them and they're idiots or irresponsible people who don't behave appropriately for society, don't go talk to them. Call the cops and have the cops go talk to them. Hire a lawyer and have the lawyer write a letter that says, stop doing what you're doing. Those are the first steps. And ultimately, if that person gets to a point where they're not stopping and you still have these ongoing problems, it becomes a question of whether or not you can make an argument for a trespass and see what you can do with it. But again, you've got to know who it is. The problem is, you may know who it is today, but if you can follow some of these drones, you can follow them, you follow it home, and you see it land in the yard, and the person goes out and you say, okay, that's John B., and I just saw them pick up that drone out of their own backyard, so it was them that did this. That's the difficulty. You've got to get that kind of information, because the minute you say there was drone damage on such and such a date, if you can't make some specific connection to a person, you have no one to sue. You have no one to proceed with. And the police are going to say the same thing. How do you know it was that person next door?
You're telling me the drone doesn't recognize my no trespassing sign?
No, I'm saying that the drone, that there's no law that protects you from a drone yet.
Well,
And those are the cases that are going to have to go.
That's the only reason it'll be there. It's got
Right,
a camera.
right.
So it can certainly see the no trespassing sign, do not enter.
Well, which is why I think,
Security area, all that stuff on a poultry farm. But it's there. I don't know where the hell it comes from, but it's there. I don't have any right to detain it, so to speak, until somebody comes to get it.
not yet. There are some, the problem is, there are mechanisms, and some of them are laughable, but anybody ever tagged birds, deer, tagged turkeys for the feds or for National Wildlife Federation or whatever, Turkey Federation? You throw out the net, it falls on them, you go up and you catch them. There are companies that sell these cannons for catching drones.
You're saying that'd be illegal for me to do that?
The problem is, number one, I think it'd be impossible for you to do it, because if,
Well, I'm talking about down, like you're talking about rooftop height. I'm not talking about way up in
But I mean, this is a device that weighs 500 pounds. I mean, you're not going to be able to turn it and catch a drone.
Now, he's talking about the Canon.
I'm talking about the Canon.
No, I know what that is, but I'm talking about,
The
the guy on the other side of the woods is looking at my property.
yeah, yeah. You
I
don't.
don't know who he is, I need evidence.
You don't have particular rights, and that's the problem. And that's something that's going to have to be, well, I think you have a right to pursue. If you can figure out who it is, I think you have a right to pursue them, and I think it's a trespass. But it's not accepted to be a trespass yet in Maryland or any other state. Almost every state is in a position where, and there are decisions, for example, I think in Minnesota, there are higher Supreme Court decisions that says that you can't fly a drone over a person's property and turn that picture into the government for the government to enforce a violation of the zoning law. The court said, no, we're not going to let that happen. But there aren't, that's one in all 50 states. That's the only one I'm aware of where that kind of issue has made it to a point where there's a decision. So it's going to take, an appeal case takes 5 years. By the time you file the lawsuit, win or lose, take it up on your first appeal, take it up on your second appeal, you're looking at 3 to 5 years to get that done. So it's going to take someone who has the resources and who's interested in pursuing these issues. And for a trespass, it has to be, the landowner has to be the person. So for example, DCA couldn't sponsor litigation to go after someone on their own. They would have to have a farmer who has the right information and be able to talk to that farmer and put that farmer in touch with a lawyer who's willing to take that kind of a case and go up with it. It's just going to take a while to get those things. But in the meantime, no, you're not allowed to shoot it down. You're not allowed to capture it. You're not allowed to do anything with it except follow it and try and figure out where it came from.
No matter how high or low it is.
Nope.
That don't quite sound.
I don't disagree with you, but right now that's the state of the law. I think that there are a number of situations where I would think if you could figure out who has it or who did it. For example, what are they going to do if, well, I don't want to say that. You just sort of have to, someone's going to have to be in a situation where they're done with it, they're going to take an action, and we'll have to see what the courts do with it, because right now there's nothing in Maryland that would protect you from that. I think it's a trespass. I think it's an easy case of trespass if it's in the curtilage of your home. But outside of that area, it becomes much more difficult. Now, the other thing is that the feds say if you are operating a commercial drone, unless you are investigatory government official, the FBI, the police department, those kinds of folks, they're a little bit different. But for any commercial drone operation, it has to be line of sight. You can't let that drone get out of your sight. So if someone's on the other side of the woods, they're in violation of federal law.
Yeah, but I don't.
You got to find out who it is, and I know.
gotta get the drone before I find out who it is.
I know. Now, and the other problem is when you get pictures of them, they all look alike. Not all, but a lot look alike. And that's another thing with the signal broadcasting that the FAA is trying to enforce, and potentially having them numbered the way that airplanes are numbered so that a photograph will tell you whose drone it is. Those things are, they're working on getting laws in place and enforcing those laws. It's just going to take a while for it to become something that is truly works to protect you. Yes.
Realistically, how many years down the road do you personally think before any laws will be in place to protect the citizens?
I don't think you're going to get a law in Maryland that does that, particularly for ag, just because of the attitude right now with the legislature. But I do think that if in the right situation, the courts would support saying that this is a trespass. And so, it's going to take someone, and you have to have the right person, you have to have all the information to be able to prove that it was their drone and they were flying it, et cetera, to bring that case, and then go up through the appellate courts and get a good written appellate decision that says, this is trespass, this is nonsense, and we're not going to tolerate it in Maryland as a common law doctrine. I think that'll happen before you'll see legislation that says it.
Do you think it will take a number of those cases
I don't think they'll ever legislate it. I think they'll let the case law stand for itself. And once you get the first case where the court, in Maryland, legally, we're a small community. If the what's now the Supreme Court of Maryland says this is a trespass, then it applies across every county. Yes.
20 years ago, I could put this coffee cup and a hive tool on top of my beehive, and my nosy neighbor wanted to know what was going on. All I had to do was Google Earth. There was a satellite picture of the hive tool on my beehive. And that's never been a legal issue since then in 20 years. So I don't see how they could possibly, if they haven't even addressed that issue of privacy,
Well,
how are they going to address an issue of
the problem is that the case law clearly says, certainly from 400 feet up, wherever is airspace, that's public domain. And there is no expectation of privacy. If it's outside and someone from 700 feet up with a helicopter can take a picture of it, there is no, I mean, there is case law that says you don't have a right to privacy for things that can be seen from satellites, for things that can be seen from normal airplanes. The question becomes what happens below that 400 feet. That's the only place. Well, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, Google Earth does have some great detail. And so,
if I did get angry and shot down a drone that was following me around the field, they're going to have a tough time proving it was me.
well, and you know, the other side of that coin is your local prosecutor going to prosecute you for that? And would a jury convict you of doing something wrong for that? I mean, those are the things that haven't been tested out.
I didn't know if that drone had a weapon system in it or not, so I was just defending myself.
Well, and then there's also, there is also harassment. I mean, these things can be harassing. And so it's not just trespass, they can be harassment as well. But these things are not, these are claims that I think will be filed eventually, but they're not there yet. There are no court decisions in Maryland that address these things yet. And so it's just going to take, if something happened tomorrow, it would take 5 years before there'd be, an appellate decision that says this is drawing the line. And that's if what happens tomorrow, it has enough concrete evidence that I, as a lawyer, can put it in front of a judge and say, here's the person, here's how we know they flew the drone, here's how we knew it was that drone, here's what happened, here's the damage, here's the trespass. You have to have all of that information, and unfortunately, as the plaintiff, you're the one who has to come up with that information. So you'd have to have that sort of scenario and get a court decision on it before it really moves.
Bottom line, it's a big can of worms, and it's a big, vast, gray area void.
Yeah. Now, I think every state would say that if someone flies, and there are a number of different, for example, there are some, realtors love drones too. And if a realtor is selling an apartment building in Annapolis that's 5 stories high, they're going to fly around it and they're going to take pictures of it and all this stuff. And they have to be careful because anything they see through a window is an invasion of privacy. So those situations certainly would be an invasion of privacy, and most likely I would think a trespass too. But outside of that sort of in the window, around the curtilage of your home kind of approach, it's up in the air and it hasn't been established yet.
You said Minnesota does have something in place?
There was a case in Minnesota where a neighbor would fly over the property of the neighbor they didn't like and take pictures and send them over to the local zoning approval and say, look, they're violating their zoning approval. And the zoning authorities took an enforcement action based on that, and it went up the courts, and I'm almost positive it's Minnesota, if you remember, Paul. I'm pretty sure it's Minnesota. Might be Montana, so one of those two. But anyway, not Maryland, I do know that. And the Supreme Court said, no. If you, the zoning people, want pictures of that person's property and what's going on that property, you have to have a warrant because you're doing law enforcement. And you can't just take pictures from other people who go about and do it just because they're not police officers, they're not government, they're not immune. You can't take the benefit of them doing that and doing it. But that's the only case in the country that I'm aware of where that happened.
Before you moved, I remember
drone up and have a dogfight with the other drone. That's really.
Well, and I would encourage, like I said, with the no trespassing signs, stating that you have video, that you record, I would encourage those kinds of postings all around your property. There's really nothing you can do. Now, one interesting thing, anybody have a boat? Any boat owners? One of the things that I've seen a lot of in my time is if you don't like the birds on your boat, you put some fishing line around the tower, or you put some fishing line around the area you don't want them to get to, and the birds won't get to it. There's nothing to say that a drone hitting a fishing line that you're trying to keep birds away from your barn, and the drone hits it, that's their problem. So.
Speaking of a boat, I'm getting ready to buy a drone just for fishing. So, I'm gonna actually land it, take off.
It's an underwater drone?
So will I?
The ultimate fish finder.
required to go through this? You can actually spot them from the sky. Some-
Sure, you got a better vision.
So will I be required to go through the same permitting and certifications?
It's for your own use. It's I don't know. It's for your own use. You're not turning that over to anyone. You're doing it for your own purposes. It's not a charter boat, is it?
No.
Then I would think it's recreational.
Is that legal? Because I know you can't do it for game, like you go out
No,
spotting for.
but you can do, it is permittable for fishing.
He's really doing it, look at the women on the other boat.
And there's the invasion of privacy, Preston.
Oh, hey, Tony, thanks. We're actually past time.
Okay, absolutely.
We really
My pleasure.
appreciate you. So let's give him a round of applause.
Really, my pleasure. Thanks for having me speak again. Always a pleasure.